Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range with the new PSA Jackal. This is a 9mm firearm. It's a simple blowback, and we'll get more into that in today's video. But this kind of complements the family now of Jackal firearms. We have the rifle that was originally chambered in 5.56, and now they're offering that in other cartridges. You have the new 308 that just came out recently, and they just launched this 9mm version. So we're going to take a closer look at it, give you some thoughts, do a little bit of a comparison to some other blowback AR-type pistols and rifles and such that we have, also including one from PSA, the ARV9. And yeah, I think you guys are going to find this little gun interesting. I've been shooting it now for several weeks, and it is an interesting firearm. And we'll get into all the specifics as soon as we fire off about, 20 or so rounds here. Go ahead and turn my little green dot sight on. Yeah, pretty interesting. Let's take a closer look. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. So the 9mm Jackal, as I mentioned in the opening of the video, it is related to the other firearms in the Jackal line. So we have carbines, pistols, and all sorts of cartridges, 223, 300 Blackout, 308 now, based on the AR-10 style lower. And this one is 9mm, and it is very much related to the ARV, which is a predecessor to the Jackal. Now, there are some notable differences between these two firearms. Both are simple blowback or just direct blowback, but this one does use a buffering system, much like a standard AR-15, where this one has the bolt and the buffering system contained within the upper. And the lowers should be compatible according to PSA. This is an early generation rifle, and there's some compatibility issues with this lower and this upper, which we'll address here shortly. I don't have a later generation of this to figure out if they've made changes so that these are truly compatible, but we'll have to find that out from PSA. So we'll set this aside for now, because this is not about the ARV9, this is about the Jackal 9. So the Jackal does use a standard AR-15 type lower, again, related to the ARV, but it does have some cosmetic changes to it that'll make it look a little bit more, aesthetically pleasing with the Jackal upper. So if I bring back out the ARV, you'll notice that the mag well, for example, is more square here. This has different lightning cuts to it and some different angles, but in theory, with generational compatibility, they should swap back and forth, the upper that is. Now keep in mind that if you want to put this upper on this lower, you'll also need this bracket, so you can buy the upper that will have this bracket with it that allows it to work with that internal captured recoil buffering system. I'm sorry guys, I have to keep swatting at my face here because we are literally being eaten up by bugs today. All right, so that means it uses a standard AR-15 style trigger, and so you can put aftermarket triggers in there. It has an AR-15 style selector. Now it does not have ambi controls, but you can pick up aftermarket triggers and put an ambi control on there if you so desire. It does have a brace on it. It has 1913 rail back here. This is pretty common with the Jackal pistol series, and this is technically a pistol, so this is an SB tactical brace. Now these braces are rather flimsy, and we hope that the short act goes through in a big beautiful bill, but as of this recording, that's not exactly approved yet. But if it does, then you'll be able to throw your braces away and just put stocks on these types of firearms. Let's hope that goes through. This is a folder, so you just lift up on it and it'll fold and it'll lock in the folded position, and then you can extend it for the brace there. And this is part of the brace system. I'm going to go into it. There's entire videos on there about how braces are supposed to work. All right, so it uses a standard AR-15 type pistol grip, so you'll see that it has an MOE grip on it right now. There is a difference here in that some of the other, AR-15 based type 9mm pistols and carbines will have a button on it, and as an example of that, it does use CZ Scorpion magazines. And this is a key difference between it and the much more expensive Daniel Defense 9mm that recently came out. This is a Magpul CZ Scorpion mag. You'll notice when it goes in, to release it, I just push a button like on an AR-15, and I can release the magazine. The JAKL is going to be a little different, and that it uses an ARV style release, which is right here, and it is ambi. So you just push forward on it with your index finger, and you can pull the magazine out. And again, you can do that from either side of the firearm. Now, it does have a last round bolt hold open on it, so when the gun goes empty, it'll lock open just like this. You do have a bolt release that is right here. It's not a traditional ping pong paddle like you would find on the Daniel Defense gun. Here you'll see it, the ambi ping pong paddle on the right side, and then the more standard one on the left side. The JAKL's not going to do that. It just has a non-ambi bolt release over here. So you just press down on that, and the bolt will go home when you decide to reload the firearm. It has a monolithic 1913 rail across the top here. There's no brakes in it. It does have a non-reciprocating charging handle that is also ambi, so you can move this charging handle over to the other side of the firearm to run it more like an AK if you so desire. 6.5-inch barrel that's nitrided, and then we have our M-lock slots out here on the handguard. So that pretty much covers off on all the features of the gun. Let's do a little shooting with it. Let's take it apart and take a look at the blowback system in it and see how that compares to, I don't know, maybe the AR-V9, because it is, as I said earlier, quite a bit different. So I've already mentioned the fact that the gun uses CZ Scorpion magazines. Now, ironically, I don't have any actual CZ Scorpion magazines with me out here today because I couldn't find any at the house. It must be back at the shop. But I did have some others. Now, it will come with a PSA manufactured magazine that'll look like this. Well, actually this, if you get the flat dark earth one. This is what came with the gun. Here's one of PSA's black magazines. And again, these are very affordably priced. What's even more cool is the fact that Magpul has now jumped in the game, and Magpul's making affordable, reliable CZ Scorpion type magazines. And there are a bunch of different options out there. This one is from Manticore Arms, and it's clear, and we've had this magazine for many years. We've done videos on it in the past, has metal feed lips and things like that. So there's a variety of magazines that'll work with the gun. So that's very affordable. Now the price of the gun is right around $1,000, and that to many of you is going to be one of those things you're going to say that's way too much money for a PSA product. That is up to you to decide. I'm not going to get into the economics side of this and why it might cost that much. That's just what it goes for. People want to pay $500 for it. They don't want to pay $1,000. I get that. But it's still quite a bit less expensive than alternatives like the DD, which is going to cost over $1,000 more. All right, with that being said, let's quickly talk about this. Now, in PSA's promotional videos that I've watched, they said that if you own the ARV, you can definitely buy a JAKL upper and pin it to your ARV lower and convert it over to a JAKL, okay? And that's probably true with current generation guns. And by that, I mean current generation ARVs. So we're gonna go ahead and pop the upper from the lower here and show you why it's not working with my first generation gun. Let me go ahead and pop the upper and the lower on the JAKL here really quick. And I didn't have time to call PSA today to try to figure this out through their customer support. I'm just going with, if they're saying it, it must be true. It just must be that I have an older generation lower. So if you take a look at the upper here, you're going to notice there's a slight hump, a rise right here above the buffer tube. And this is what's keeping the JAKL, 9mm JAKL upper from being able to pin to the lower. It'll pin just fine up in front, but the buffer or recoil spring and guide right here will hit that slight raised hump, and it'll keep it just far enough out of position where I cannot get the pin across. And ensure that if you're trying to buy a JAKL upper for your ARV lower, just make sure that you have the lower that'll be compatible with it. And they should be able to help you with that when you call PSA. So if you take a look at the bottom half of the gun, you'll notice it's very much AR-15-ish, as I already mentioned, has just standard AR-15 fire control system in there. Here's your feed ramp. This is your ejector that's pinned into the lower receiver. And then if you take a look, oops, let's get this out of there. I'm going to launch this, you watch. All right, so you really have to push that recoil spring in. There you go. And you can see where this little round piece engages in a slot that's cut into the top to hold everything in place. So there's your recoil spring and guide rod. Set that down here. Pull your charging handle to the rear, and then the bolt will come right out of the gun. So now you can see it's just a big, massive hunk of metal. And when you shoot this thing, you're going to feel this thing slapping around in there. And that's one of the downsides to blowback. The upside is, typically speaking, blowback is extremely reliable. It's extremely simple. Fewer parts to break, things like that. So that's why a lot of folks like it. Think of MAC-10s and Uzis, just going way back in the day. But more modern firearms are moving back towards an older system that was made popular by H&K called roller delay. And you're going to see different variations of that roller delay system on guns like the Streebog. I'm trying to remember the name of the company, but they're doing a 9mm AR-15 roller. It's using like a bearing roller locking system. So we're starting to see the concept of roller delays coming back into the PCC game, and it does bring that recoil impulse down, but it also brings the cost up, right? And so that's the trade-off with blowback. So some folks are not going to like the jarring recoil impulse. In semi-automatic, it's not that big of a deal. In fully automatic, say something like an MP5 versus this, the MP5 is going to be quite a bit more controllable. You maintain a sight picture better with a gun like that than you would this, but this isn't a machine gun. And as far as 9mm blowbacks go, it's really no different than any others in terms of the recoil impulse. So you can see just the machining quality there. And it all seems really good. Nicely finished. No rough edges or unfinished machine marks anywhere on it. Taking a look on the inside, you can see the little sled in there. That's part of the charging handle. And yeah, overall just a very, oops, I just dropped my charging handle out. It's that easy. So if I wanted to reverse it, all I have to do is just put the sled back in, where it lines up, drop the charging handle in from the other side, and now I've set it up for right-hand operation, but I don't like running it like that. I prefer to run it the other way. So let's put it back the way we found it. And there's a little game to be played here. When you put this across, you want to make sure it gets picked up by, locked in on both sides, I should say. As I struggle with this little guy, get it back in there. Come on. There we go. All right. Then you put your bolt back in. Now you'll notice that it has little wings here, and you have to line this up with the guides on the inside. So it just sets on top there. These bugs are driving me nuts. All right, so it's a very stable bolt, so you're not going to get a lot of movement in the front because of those little wings that line up with a track that kind of holds everything in place. Push that all the way forward. Take your recoil spring, turn this up, push it in, up, and it'll lock in place, and that'll keep it from shooting out and hitting you in the eyeball. And then just pin the upper back to the lower like that. And she's back together. So it's very easy to maintenance the firearm and keep it working even in the field. And yeah, I should also mention that it has a 1/2x28 threaded barrel, so you can suppress the gun if you want to. I've just left the bird cage on it that it ships with, which is a little out of the ordinary for me. So we're shooting some 115 grain Federal ball. And I do want to thank our friends over at Federal for supplying the ammunition free of charge to the channel. And let's do a little bit of shooting at 100 yards here. So the controls seem to be pretty intuitive. You can definitely feel when the gun locks open, which is to be expected with a blowback gun like this. It's nice to be able to, now that was the PSA mag, this is the Magpul mag. It's nice to be able to put your hand over the weapon like this because you don't have to worry about that reciprocating charging handle causing malfunctions because it does not reciprocate. So put the magazine in, as I pointed out earlier, you have the bolt release over here. I'm just going to push down on that with my thumb. So you have basically one motion. You run the magazine in, reach up with your thumb, drop that bolt, and then you can resume shooting. my sight's coming off. I have to tighten that back up. But as you can see, she works just fine. And the accuracy with the loose sight's not bad for the bush that I'm shooting at. So Jason reminded me that I forgot to show you the differences between the original ARV upper and its buffering system and the JAKL. So here is a kind of, it's not traditional, but it's similar to a traditional 9mm Colt bolt type carrier. We've played with these in the past, tried to drop them into Colts and they don't work. But it's just a simple blowback, and it is based on the original Colt 9mm design, which requires the buffer assembly. And this rides in the receiver extension back here where the stock is on a standard AR-15. And that's why it's different than the JAKL. The JAKL, here's its bolt and recoil system. You see it's much shorter. So that's the biggest difference between it. But again, according to PSA, these two are compatible. Just make sure you have the right generational lower on the ARV before you go and order your JAKL 9mm upper. Now, there was a time when I would always take a new firearm like this out and say, does it 80s hip fire, and can I bump fire it? Well, I can still do the 80s hip firing, but apparently YouTube has now decided that bump firing, even without a bump stock, is now against their policy. So if I want to leave this video up, I can't bump fire. As a matter of fact, I can still get into trouble just by firing the gun too quickly. YouTube, oh, we love you so much. All right, so let's 80s hip fire this bad boy and see how she does. So what are my thoughts on the JAKL? Well, it's coming to market in a very crowded market. So you have a lot of choices for 9mm PCC type firearms. And so this is just coming into that crowded market. There's a lot of people out there that enjoy PSA products, and so I think this is going to appeal to them. Now, if you have more money to spend, you might want to try for a different option. Again, the HK clones and even HK themselves are making the MP5 again. You have all sorts of different guns, again, from Daniel Defense, like I've shown, and we have the Kuna that's now out, which I don't currently have one. All sorts of stuff, and that's roller delayed. All sorts of these, fairly affordable firearms coming out, Streebog included. And so again, it's a very crowded field. But how do I think that it stacks up? Well, I think the quality and such of this is every bit as good as something like a Streebog. Matter of fact, I'd probably think it's a little bit better because I had lots of problems with the Streebogs in the early days. They seem to have resolved most of those, but this one right out of the box has worked for me. The price, some of you are going to cringe at the price. I get that, especially in today's economy. The dollar just isn't worth what it used to be. Seems like the dollar's worth about 5 cents these days, as they compared to about 30 years ago or even 20 years ago. So I understand that. The price will turn some of you guys off, but in terms of features and quality, shootability, and this fun factor, it seems to be there, but that's going to be up to you, the consumer. In my experience, the gun works pretty good. We did have a little bit of a sticky trigger. All we had to do is put a little bit of oil on that, and it ran just fine. But keep in mind, use a standard AR-15 trigger so you can pick up an AR-15 trigger from anywhere. They're not even expensive, and drop a different trigger into it if you want a Geisley or something like that. So overall, yeah, I don't think it's a bad firearm. It's just going to be, does it scratch the itch that you have? And that's the biggest question. So I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. If you have any questions about the gun, you can post those questions down below. I do try to stick around for the first couple of days after I post a new video to answer the questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel so we can continue to bring you content like this, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. Right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and support button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that button and you can help support us right here in the age of demonetization. Swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 17 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.